This is a production of WGBH2 Boston.
Tonight, a special Greater Boston. The final debate between incumbent U.S. Congressman Michael Capuano and Boston City Councilor Ayanna Pressley, challenging him for the 7th Congressional District seat. With a September 4th primary just around the corner, this is it. It's the final chance for the two Democrats to make their case to the voters in an election that's drawn national attention. We'd also like to welcome into the debate our listeners on 89.7 WGBH Radio and viewers online at WGBHnews.org. Let's get to it. Joined by Congressman Michael Capuano. He's represented his district since 1999. Good to see you, Congressman.
Nice to see you, Jim.
City Councilor Ayanna Pressley was first elected to that role in 2009. Good to see you, too. No time clock, so we'll keep track of speaking time to keep things relatively even. And with less than a half hour tonight, brevity would be appreciated from both of you. If I can start with you, Councilor, you said repeatedly in this campaign, the 7th is the bluest of districts. To quote you, having a progressive voting record is not exactly a profile in courage. But I want to start with voting. Of the thousands of votes he's taken in the last 20 years, can you give me 2 or 3 that he cast that you would have cast differently?
Well, thanks for having us. First, I just want to say that I don't define the totality of this job or leadership simply by votes or years served. And so I'm running because I think there are many opportunities to lead that are not just about voting. But yes, there are some votes that I would have taken differently. When the ACA was in committee and my opponent, when it was in committee before it went to the floor, supported extending the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits access, mostly to low-income women, to abortion. I also would have cast a different vote on the Blue Lives Matter legislation.
Let's hear what he had to say. How about those 2 votes, Congressman?
I have no memory of ever voting for the Hyde Amendment, and if I did, every Democrat did, including every Democratic woman.
It was the Stu Pact.
And I don't remember. I didn't vote in the committee where ACA was done, so we only had votes on the floor. We did have to vote on certain things we didn't like in that bill, of course, because it was a big, comprehensive bill. But remember, no Republicans voted for that bill, and the only people that voted for a bill that extended health insurance to 20 million people were Democrats. We had to stay unified, or it wouldn't have happened.
I'm sorry, of course.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, what I'm saying is that I will sit at the table and compromise and work with anyone in the name of progress. But there are things that I'm unwilling to compromise and to negotiate on. And that is the rights of women, of immigrants, of workers, and the LGBTQIA community. Perfection should not be the enemy of good. But the fact remains, and this was publicly reported during the Coakley Senate debate, that while that was being deliberated upon, that you would have extended the Hyde Amendment, which would have limited access for low-income women to abortion. Furthermore, when we were debating the omnibus bill, you offered that you would be willing to invest money in a Trump hate wall. That was not a Clean Dream Act, and I cannot look in the face of parents and say, listen, I will negotiate with anyone, but on these things I'm unwilling to moderate. We need a Clean Dream Act.
Pardon me?
We can have an opportunity?
Of course.
The Hyde Amendment was not part of that bill, and number one, every woman, every single Democratic woman, from Nancy Pelosi to Diana DeGette to Rosa DeLauro, every woman who was a champion of women's rights voted for that bill, number one. Number two is I wouldn't have got 100% from Planned Parenthood and NARAL had I voted for the Hyde Amendment as proposed. Number two, as far as the wall goes, let's be very clear. The United States Senate passed an immigration bill last year where almost every Democrat voted for it that had some money in the wall, including Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and Senator Sanders.
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
He asked what I would do, and I'm saying I wouldn't do that. And I also want to say
can we just stay on one issue at a time, if we can, Councilor?
Sure.
On the immigration issue, this congressman said he'd vote for some money for the wall to get a better, larger comprehensive immigration bill. If you got everything you wanted, but it included, bill included money for what you call the hate wall, not a dollar.
No. And let me just say this. I'm not casting aspersions upon the congressman or anyone. We each individually arrive at these decisions and take these votes alone. And I respect how they arrive at it. You asked what I would do, and I'm telling you what I would do. I also want to add that since there's been a lot of talk about the need for Democrats to be in the majority and the power of seniority, but majority and seniority means nothing without leadership. When we were in the majority and after the Virginia Tech shooting and this is on the record, the congressman said that he would not push for gun control to go to the floor because we already know that we're going to lose. And I have a problem with that.
Let's hold it there. Did you say that?
I don't know what I said 10 years ago. I will tell you unequivocally, it's great to be perfect, but Senator Warren, Senator Markey, and Senator Sanders all voted for a comprehensive immigration reform bill that had we had an opportunity to vote for in the House, I would have voted for. It would have saved a lot of hassle for people on temporary protective status, the dreamers, and the mothers and children being separated at the border.
I got to move on. One last thing about this. When you said you wouldn't vote for $1 for the wall, the 600 or 700 miles of the wall that currently exist, most of it were funded under Barack Obama. Was he wrong to allow that funding to happen, to build a fence or a wall?
None of us, are exempt from criticism here. I've called for the defunding.
But you said you wouldn't vote for a nickel. He approved.
I'm telling you, right. You asked what I would do, and I'm saying that I would not. Okay?
Was he wrong to? Was the president wrong to?
I would not do it, and because I'm not going to. I cannot look in the face of parents if it is not a clean dream act and say we're going to save some children, but not all of them.
Okay, I want to move to you for a second. Something else you do agree on is impeaching the president. 2/3 of Democrats say they agree with you in a recent poll, but it seems you were against impeachment, Congressman, before you were for it. Here's your newsletter from the middle of 2017. American people need all the facts wherever they may lead. Those facts will come through the special counsel. If the facts support a case for impeachment, then the evidence will be there to make a case. We just don't know that yet. What changed between then, where you said, let's wait and see,
every day I wake
and
up,
2 votes for impeachment in the House?
Every day I wake up, Donald Trump does something more amazing.
What did he do that caused you to say we don't have to wait for Bob Mueller?
There was no one issue. It was an accumulation of issues every single day. The first vote I took on it was last year, before there was any opposition. I didn't change my mind, just got to the point where you have to vote on it. And by the way, it wasn't for impeachment. It was to get impeachment hearings going. I still sit here today and tell you I would not convict anyone, not even Donald Trump.
The House doesn't convict anyone. The House indicts.
They indict. I wouldn't indict anyone. You're right, technically. I wouldn't indict anyone on the basis of news reports. I think the House needs to do its work, needs to do its job.
Would you vote before Bob Mueller comes down with his report?
If the House had done its job and we knew the facts, absolutely, yes, I would.
Would you vote before Bob Mueller report, Councilor Pressley?
I think we have a confluence of evidence that this president is unfit to lead and has made us very vulnerable in many ways and is not a reflection of our values.
So has he committed impeachable offenses in your
Absolutely.
What are they?
I'm not sure where to begin.
Well, give me 2 of them.
Again, there is a daily insult and assault, a fire hose that we're drinking from with this president and this administration. It's a confluence of so many things. It's his draconian and racist and bigoted and cruel and short-sighted policymaking. It's this zero tolerance policy informed by zero compassion and zero empathy. It's him playing footsie with Vladimir Putin. He's befriending our enemies. He's alienating our allies. Okay. It's traitorous, treasonous behavior. The fact that Russia just yesterday said that they're pleased with the Helsinki summit is evidence of the treasonous behavior of this president.
You mentioned racism. Can we talk about race for a couple of minutes? In a stunning spotlight series in the Boston Globe a few months ago about race in Boston in 2018, the number that everybody took away, median net assets for a white family in Boston, almost $250,000. Black family, $8. A Latino, Hispanic family, $3,000. Very quickly, have either of you done anything to ameliorate that grotesque disparity, Congressman?
I think my record has when it comes to housing. Mostly we'll start with housing, we'll start with tax policy, we'll start with transportation. A lot of those things are all geared towards trying to narrow that income gap, either getting people to work, getting them into homes and housing that they can afford, helping them afford any housing they can get to. A tax policy that understands that working people need more tax breaks than the richest of the rich. So right off the top.
We haven't passed any tax policy. You opposed the president's tax
on that, yeah, absolutely. With Donald Trump in the office, we're not going to get to pass a piece of legislation. We're going to have to fight it, and that's what we've done. But we have done things in transportation. We have done things in housing when Democrats are in the majority, all of which I'm very proud of. Is it enough? No, of course it's not enough. But it's a good record to begin on when we've had a divided country for my entire adult life.
What have you done to help ameliorate that horrible disparity, Councilor?
Yeah, well, this is the work that I've dedicated my life to, not just my council tenure, economic inequality, the wealth and wage gap, structural racism, calling it for what it is, and gun violence, which is a byproduct of these other social determinants. So this has been the work that I've been doing. This is why I'm running, because I'm not just focused on how to resist Trump. I think I'm the only candidate that's talking about how to advance the 7th. These inequities and disparities that were spotlighted in this Globe series and that I see up close and personal every day throughout the 7th existed long before this man occupied the White House. So here's some of the things that I've done. done. One, working in partnership to author and pass an ordinance to increase the city spend with minority business enterprises to address the RFP process. We were spending less than 1% of our city contracts and procurement opportunities with minority businesses. We have to grow wealth. Secondly, reforming the state's liquor license laws, also to grow the number of minority-owned businesses and to build community and wealth.
Can I stop there and ask you about another racial divide issue,
Sure.
if I may? Senator Elizabeth Warren said this when she was speaking at Dillard. It's an historically black university in New Orleans a handful of days ago. Let's just start with the hard truth about our criminal justice system. It's racist. It is. And when I say our system, I mean all the way, she said. I mean front to back. This is not just sentencing reform we're talking about here. We're talking about the front end on what you declare to be illegal, on how you enforce it, on who gets arrested. Is she right?
Yes.
Is she right?
She hits the nail pretty close on the head. I think that it's a lot more than just, I think it's more than just intentional racism. I think it's institutional racism that we have to embrace. There are a lot of people working on this. We can start right in Boston with Sheriff Tompkins and with Sheriff Katuja and Sheriff Bellotti. They're working hard to try to balance this scale. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has done some criminal justice reform, not enough. We came close with Republicans this year. They talked a good game. We didn't get there. There's a lot of work to do to balance these scales.
A lot of police chiefs told the Boston Globe they were very upset with the comments from Senator Warren saying it tarnished the reputations, and I'm paraphrasing, of all cops, including the good cops. Did they not have a point?
Well, I didn't read all of the senator's exact words. I will tell you
well, I just read you verbatim
well,
what you said.
I don't know what, if that alone, I would think
sorry.
Probably not. But at the same time, I want to be real clear. I think most people in the criminal justice system are trying to do the right thing and trying to get it right. A lot of the problems they have are the laws that are passed. A lot of the problems they have are mandatory minimum sentences. A lot of the problems they have is after a person serves their time, they then have to carry that burden for the rest of their life.
Do police chiefs have a point, Counselor?
We're not talking about people. We're talking about institutions. And also, just to be clear, mass incarceration is a byproduct. It is the manifestation of discriminatory and racist policies and the confluence of those things over time. It's modern day slavery. The lion's share of people that are incarcerated are black and brown men and women and low income folks. We need, bail reform. We need cash bail reform. Or just to eliminate it. We need to eliminate the cash bail system. We need sentencing reform. We need restorative justice practices. We need, if we're looking for, there's just so many injustices. This is racist. I mean, this is a byproduct of so many other social determinants in poverty. This is why I'm running. This is the most diverse district and the most unequal. And if we don't right size these social determinants that contribute to the likelihood of setting someone on the pathway, and I have worked on the council right now, I'm reforming Boston area school policies, which on their face appear to be gender and racially neutral, but are resulting in the disproportionate push out and disciplinary practices bore by black and brown boys and girls, pushing them in the school to prison pipeline.
The Globe says the schools have been resegregated in recent years.
I agree. But what I'm saying, though, is that criminal justice reform, there's work to be done right now. Okay. This is why I'm running, and I have a proposal that's about more than just voting on criminal justice reform. I'm advocating for Corey-friendly housing. I've codified equity. For Corey-friendly housing, if we know that unemployment is the #1 contributor to recidivism, and we are releasing people to shelter, 30% of our chronically homeless have criminal records,
and
they need housing.
You've had 2 more minutes so far, according to our producers. At a Channel 5 debate recently, you were asked about the NFL protests, Congressman, and you said you supported them. Ested Herndon from the New York Times tweeted a video of you this morning from a town hall last year in which you said, talk about Colin Kaepernick. He was right to raise the issue of racial disparity on our streets. He was wrong the way he raised the issue. So do you support the NFL protest or do you oppose the NFL protest?
I support their right to protest, absolutely, 100%. It's a First Amendment right. They have a right to do it. I personally think that if you're going to raise an issue like that, you should do it in a way that actually brings people in. I thought that particular action divided America along the line because he chose to do it on the national anthem. I understand what he's doing. I actually agree with the concept of what he's doing. I just thought that it could have been done in a way that would have brought more people into a discussion rather than actually anger an awful lot of Americans.
So you think that kneeling is the wrong tactic? I just think that right now it's become right because it wasn't that bad. But now that Donald Trump has called them out on it, of course they're going to do it, and I don't blame them. It's like I don't like what's going on in America. This is what I protest. This is how I protest it. The minute Donald Trump called them out on it, of course more people are going to do it, and it's more divisive. They allowed the country to be divided as opposed to brought together to have a conversation about the issues. So you support the cause but not the tactic?
Very much so.
How about you?
I support both. and it is necessary that we are disruptive right now and making people uncomfortable. Again, this is the issue of police brutality and the disproportionate brutality and murder of black men. This strikes at the soul and the consciousness of this country, and this should be of consequence and concern to everyone. They have every right. I stand in solidarity with them, and it is also why I would not have voted for the Blue Lives Matter bill, because it makes it a federal crime for someone to assault a police officer, and so we are holding up the dignity and the life of police officers, and meanwhile, we are not getting justice for the black men that are being murdered in this country every day. Do you want to respond to that?
She disagrees with your vote on that matter.
Fine, I'll stand by the vote, because all it did, that was an actual throwaway vote. The bill that we voted on did not end up changing federal law. It was a statement bill, and that's all it was. Federal law was already there that bill covered. It was redundant.
I'm sorry, but the statement that it would be a federal crime for someone to assault an officer when black people are disproportionately profiled and brutalized by police and could be defending themselves.
I would agree with everything, but I would also agree that if you intentionally target a police officer, that's not a good thing. And it doesn't say that there are not other problems, but I also don't think that you should go out of your way to intentionally target a police officer. And I do think...
Nor should you intentionally target a black man, and they are being targeted.
I totally agree, but I do not think you should intentionally be allowed or ignore when you intentionally target a police. That's all.
Agreed, but how do we hold narratives for both experiences?
That's all that bill said.
For both experiences, and that's why these protests matter.
Counselor, when you were supporting Hillary Clinton during the last campaign, you said of Bernie Sanders, plans without a price tag are simply pandering. Anger is not a plan. Inventing is not a strategy. You've now embraced those plans, like $15 an hour, Medicare for all. So I assume you were pandering, correct, if he was then?
Not at all.
Why not?
My values have remained the same. We are in uncharted terrain and a completely new world order under this presidency. Might I also add that I know where I was 2 years ago, and I was spending my time traversing and traveling this country to help elect Hillary Clinton.
But I still understand. Why was 15?
Jim, let me finish. Let me finish, because I know that elections have consequences, and I did not want Donald Trump to be elected. Now this man is in office, and we see the consequences of that every single day, and these policies coming out of Washington are meant to divide us and to make us feel small. I'm saying that this is the time to be bold. This can be our darkest hour or our finest.
Why was $15 an hour pandering then and not now? Why was Medicare for all pandering then and not now? That's all I'm asking.
I was not saying that. That statement was not in response to every single issue that you're talking about. What I'm saying is that right now we're at a watershed moment. We're at a crossroads in our country, and we have to be bold. When I look at an issue like single payer, health care and Medicare for all, 2 years ago, this was not a position that most Americans even supported. But we find ourselves where people are establishing GoFundMe pages to pay their medical bills.
Do you regret having said he was pandering,
We're at a watershed moment.
Do you regret having said he was pandering?
I do not regret having worked hard to try to elect Hillary Clinton, because I know that elections have consequences.
I will say unequively, it's part of the challenge we have.
You supported Sanders, I should say.
No, I supported Hillary Clinton. I worked hard for her.
I thought in the primary. My apologies.
No, I supported Hillary Clinton, but I've worked with Bernie Sanders. Served 8 years in the House with him. I like and respect him and his wife. He's a good man with good ideas, some of which I disagree with, some of which I agree with. I actually disagree with some of Hillary Clinton's ideas and agree with some as well. I supported her for a number of reasons, but I will tell you that the biggest problem we have is the internal fights within the Democratic Party. We have to stop that if we have any hope and desire to actually defeat Donald Trump.
Like on what, for example?
Like calling each other names. Look, you can disagree with someone, especially someone you might be on a different page on, but you're in the same chapter of the same book, and I just don't think you should be calling them names.
What name calling are you referring to?
Pandering and everything else. I just don't think that's the way to defeat Donald Trump and to address and to advance the agenda that we share.
I'm sorry, Jim, might I also just add that we're in a different place from a revenue standpoint. If we have an administration that's willing to give tax breaks to the wealthy and to invest in a Space Force, we certainly do have the money for many of these things.
Yesterday we learned about one of the most egregious horrors I can think of in Pennsylvania, with at least 300 priests assaulting at least 1,000 identified young boys and girls, probably thousands more according to the grand jury there. This is in Pennsylvania. Obviously the Catholic Church is what we're talking about. Is there a role for the federal government? All we read yesterday, statute of limitations. They can't bring criminal charges. They can't bring civil. What's the role?
If it's a statute of limitations problem, but I think it's a state law that they're talking about. I'm not positive.
Correct. Well, is there a role for the federal government?
Certainly there's a leadership role for it, and number one. And number two, if it becomes necessary in a legal capacity, the answer is yes. I'm not aware that there's one off the top of my head.
How about you? Is there a role for the federal government here, Counselor?
I believe there is. I have to say, as a survivor of sexual abuse myself and standing in solidarity with my survivor community, one of the reasons why I am running is during this moment of renewed and elevated consciousness around these issues is the opportunity to codify this activism in lawmaking to make sure that survivors can get on a pathway to healing and to the justice they deserve. But again, it's a national movement, but there's work to be done locally in community. These organizations like the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, the Victim Rights Law Center, Casa Mirna, and other organizations, they are struggling. More people are disclosing, and they don't have the resources. And so I'm focused on advocating for that. I want to stay
on Catholic churches. I mean, this is arguably the largest sexual violence ring, maybe in the history of the country, within the Catholic Church, and everybody's sending thoughts and prayers. Do either of you know what Australia, talk about federal, national governments. Do you know what Australia did on this issue? Australia created a royal commission.
Different legal system, though.
I understand that, but is that not something we could do here? They ended up creating a National Office for Child Safety, mandatory reporters, compensation for survivors. If the states can't handle this, isn't that why you're there?
Very clearly that should be part of a comprehensive criminal justice reform bill, which is exactly the kinds of things we were talking about. We have been unsuccessful thus far getting a national registry of sexual violators.
But I would also add that one of the things that I've proposed, because I am focused on the mass 7th and not just resisting Trump, but I have a plan for the 7th and have developed an equity agenda for the 7th. And one of the issues that I'm proposing is that we develop a survivor's bill of rights. It already exists for survivors of sexual assault, but I think that there are amendments and things to look at that to make it more robust, to make sure that survivors can get on a pathway to healing and get the justice they deserve in workplaces, in the courts, and even in the halls of Congress, because there are a lot of experiences there.
You have gotten 2 minutes and 45 seconds more than the congressman so far, so we'll give you a little extra time here. I want to talk about one aspect of health care that I think virtually everybody, well, with one exception, people are probably in agreement on. The drug prices are out of control. You've taken a lot of money from the Biotech Council and from pharmaceutical companies. You haven't taken anyway. Does that not compromise you, or at least present an appearance of conflict when you take money from the Lillies?
If I didn't have a record, it could, but my record is long, and you could clearly study it. I have been one of the leading advocates of Medicare for All. I've been one of the leading voices to fight against the law that was passed by Republicans that prohibited the federal government from negotiating with drug companies. All of that is nuts.
Medicare, you mean, in particular, right?
Medicare, that's it's all Medicare and Medicaid. That is absolutely nuts. I mean, it's one thing not to do it. It's another thing to pass a law that says you cannot do it. Every other country you compete with does it. We should be doing it. It would have controlled prices a long time ago. I was one of the leading voices when we were fighting then to allow people to go back and forth to Canada, get drugs from outside the country, cheaper prices. So,
by the way, the President of the United States, as candidate, supported both of those positions, as you well know, until he met with the pharmaceutical executives.
Yeah, I know. It's very interesting. I've been supporting these positions since day one, and I will continue to do so.
Do you not worry, though, about the appearance issue, even if you say your record speaks for itself?
Look, there is no one in the world who thinks that anybody who takes money from anybody, developers or pharmaceutical companies or anybody else, is always suspect. But when you have a record, you can go back and look and see what I've actually done. Particularly in this district, when it comes to pharmaceutical companies, they didn't used to donate until they started buying all of the biopharma companies that we created here in this district. Remember, they are one of the largest employers in the 7th Congressional District and in Greater Boston, and they represent a lot of people.
Can you give me concretely what you do, what you propose in Congress and fight for to lower drug prices for the people in the 7th Congressional District?
I think we should be negotiating those prices. And again, I do believe with the goal, so first of all, we have to, preserve the ACA. And then I think the goal is to get us on a pathway to single-payer health care and Medicare for all, which will ultimately create greater access and lower those prices.
How much should race and gender matter to voters on September 4th? I know you've said you don't like identity politics. I'm not asking about identity politics. We all know it's a majority-minority district. Should it matter to them? Should the issues be where people stand on the issues, leadership issue? How much should race and gender matter, Counselor?
I'll leave that up to the electorate. I do believe that government cannot be formed by the people if all the people are not represented. But I'm running because I believe that these times require bold activist leadership and a leader that will restore people's hope, redeem their relationship with government, and extend a hand of partnership, and be an organizer, a convener, and a mobilizer. That is what's necessary. We were able to protect the ACA not because people just cast a vote on the floor, but because they worked with community to organize, to mobilize, to protect the ACA.
not a bold activist leader?
I'm running because I believe I provide bold activist leadership. I'm proven, and this is what I've done on the Boston City Council, is to govern with community. I believe solutions exist in community, and I want to be a partner with community in legislating.
Congressman, when you were elected, the district was 57% white. It is now majority minority.
Actually, that's not right. It was lower than that, but that's
right. Somewhere in that neighborhood. No people of color have ever served in this House delegation. As you know, 6 women have served. Should that not be a consideration for people on September 4th?
Of course it should be a consideration. It should not necessarily be the deciding factor. On these issues, I can simply only quote Reverend King. People should be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Period. There was no exceptions to that comment. I don't think there should be any exceptions to that comment. I'm not silly enough to think that people don't take it into consideration. Of course, some do. I think most don't. They will look at my record. They will look at the record of accomplishments we've had, the fights that we've had against Donald Trump, the fights we've had in favor of providing the ACA. The councilor's right. We didn't just go in and vote for the ACA. We went in and worked with a lot of people to try to get the right combination of things, and it came. And especially, we did the same thing when we did defense of it. And it's not just that. We did the same thing on transportation. We do the same thing on housing. In the United States Congress, you have to be able to work with all kinds of people. People that don't think like you, people that don't look like you, don't worship like you. In this district, there is a majority of no one. You have to be able to will, and not just have to.
What's the last major thing that you worked on that became law where you worked with people across the aisle?
Well, that's been hard because it's been very nonpartisan. But I will tell you the last thing, we just passed a bill on the FAA that was a bipartisan bill. Didn't have a lot of money in it, but the policy was good. We passed several provisions in there that will help quiet our skies.
I'm sorry, I just want to say something about that.
Briefly, if you can.
Yeah, because I just feel like sometimes it's being inferred that I can't work with everyone. I have been the top vote getter in this city for 3 consecutive elections, first person of color to do that, first woman in 30 years. The agenda that I've championed and my record has been one that's deeply resonant, proven, and transcendent. Otherwise, I would not be 8 years in my 5th term, decisively earning almost 60,000 votes.
Councilor, we have about a minute left, 30 seconds each. I don't know there are a ton of topics we haven't reached. I'm sure you're both frustrated about. Take 30 seconds on a topic that I didn't bring up that you think it's important for voters to know about for September 4th. 30 seconds, please.
I'm running for the 7th Congressional District because I think I'm the only candidate in this race that has a vision for the 7th. The systemic inequalities and disparities that are deepening under this administration existed long before Trump occupied the White House. Ultimately, I don't think that hate can be defeated by a vote. It's going to require a movement. I want to build it and be in coalition with community in doing exactly that. And one of the issues we certainly have to tackle is housing. And I see that as a public health issue, which is why I've proposed Medicaid funding be used towards housing.
30 seconds, Congressman.
Very simply, I hope people don't just listen to us. Every politician in the world running for every office will tell you how wonderful we are and how great we are. I think you have to look to independent groups that look at us that don't have any vested interests and see what they think about us. I've been endorsed by the Human Rights Campaign. I've been endorsed by union after union after union, including teachers and nurses. I have the support of Congressman John Lewis, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Not because that matters, but because it says something about me and the ability to work with other members of Congress.
Congressman, thank you so much for your time. Jim. Councilor, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you both being here. Greater Boston's debate week wraps up tomorrow with the 2 remaining Democrats hoping to challenge Republican Governor Charlie Baker in November. Bob Massey and Jay Gonzalez face off in their final debate before the September 4th primary. We hope you'll join us for that. Thank you so much for watching.